Commander Taiwan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, staring at the viewing screen with steady eyes. Outside, the stars looked peaceful, like they always had. Earth floated below, blue and green and beautiful. Everything seemed normal. But Taiwan knew something was wrong. His crew felt it too. The silence was too heavy. "Commander," Sora said from her station. She was his second in command, smart and quick-thinking. "We're picking up strange readings near Jupiter's orbit." Taiwan walked to her console. "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures. Massive ones. They're not like anything in our database." Before Taiwan could respond, the space near Jupiter rippled like water. Then, it tore open. Ships poured through the tier. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. They were enormous. Dark vessels covered in glowing lines that pulsed like veins. The largest one was the size of a small moon. "Battle stations!" Taiwan shouted. Alarms screamed through the Defiant. All across Earth's orbit, human ships came alive, their engines burning bright. A message came through on all channels. The voice was deep and strange, speaking through a translator. "Humans of Earth, we are the Varkath Coalition. We rule this galaxy. You will surrender your world and your people. You will serve us. You have one day to accept." The message ended. Taiwan looked at his crew. Young Jiho, the best pilot they had, gripped his controls tightly. Nari, the chief engineer, was already running calculations on her screens. Everyone waited for orders. "Open a channel to Earth Command," Taiwan said. For 6 hours, Earth's leaders argued. Some wanted to surrender. They had seen the size of the alien fleet. Human technology was new, primitive compared to what the Varkath had. Earth had only been traveling to other stars for 20 years. These aliens had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but others refused to bow. They said freedom was worth fighting for. They said humans had never surrendered before, not to anyone. Finally, Earth's council sent their answer back through Taiwan. He broadcasted on all frequencies, so the Varkath could hear. "No," Taiwan said simply. "We will not surrender." The Varkath response was immediate. Their fleet moved forward like a dark tide. Plasma weapons charged, making their ships glow red and orange. They had done this 1,000 times before. Every species they had ever met had surrendered within days. The few who fought were destroyed quickly. "All ships, prepare for engagement," Taiwan ordered. The human fleet was small compared to the aliens. 50 warships against thousands. But they moved into formation anyway. Jiho launched from the Defiant's hangar with his fighter squadron. 12 small ships against an armada. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt angry. These aliens came to his home and demanded surrender. They would learn that was a mistake. The battle began. Varkath dreadnoughts fired their plasma cannons. The beams could melt through a ship's hull in seconds. Human vessels dodged and weaved, their pilots using instinct and gut feeling. The Varkath targeting computers were perfect, calculating every possible movement. But they couldn't predict human unpredictability. Jiho flew his fighter straight at a Varkath cruiser. The alien point defense systems tracked him, firing streams of energy. He rolled left, then right, then dropped suddenly. His movements made no mathematical sense. The alien computers couldn't keep up. He got close enough to launch his missiles. They struck the cruiser's reactor. It exploded in a ball of fire. "Yes," Jiho shouted. His squadron followed his example, flying like madmen, trusting their instincts over logic. On the Defiant, Sora coordinated the larger ships. She ordered 3 destroyers to ram a Varkath carrier. The captains of those destroyers didn't hesitate. They aimed their ships like spears and hit full thrust. The Varkath shields held for a moment, then collapsed. The destroyers smashed into the carrier's hull. All 4 ships exploded together, It was a suicide attack. No alien species would waste ships like that. The Varkath hadn't planned for enemies who would gladly die to win, but the human fleet was still dying. For every Varkath ship destroyed, humans lost 3 or 4. The Defiant took hit after hit. Nari worked frantically to keep the engines running. Sparks flew from broken consoles. The ship shook with each impact. "Hull breach on deck 7, someone shouted. "Seal it," Nari yelled back. Her hands flew across her controls, rerouting power, patching systems together with quick fixes that shouldn't work but did. Taiwan watched his fleet dying around him. Earth's orbital defense platforms were burning. Debris filled the space around Jupiter. But the Varkath fleet had lost something too. Dozens of their ships were destroyed. Hundreds more were damaged. The Varkath commander couldn't understand it. These humans were supposed to be easy prey. Their technology was centuries behind. Their ships were slow and poorly armed. But they fought like devils. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation. They used tactics that made no sense but somehow worked. After 6 hours of battle, the Varkath fleet suddenly stopped firing. They pulled back, retreating beyond Jupiter's orbit. The remaining human ships held their position, weapons still hot, ready to keep fighting. Another message came from the Varkath. "You have fought well. We withdraw to regroup. But we will return. You cannot win this war." The channel closed. The alien fleet opened portals in space and disappeared, leaving behind their dead and debris. On the Defiance bridge, Taiwan's crew looked around in shock. They were alive. They had survived. But the cost was terrible. Of 50 human warships, only 20 remained. Thousands of people were dead. The orbital platforms were destroyed. Jupiter's moons had taken damage from missed shots. "Did we win?" Jiho asked over the comm. "We survived," Taiwan answered. "That's enough for now." Sora pulled up the battle data. "Commander, look at this. The Varkath lost 15% of their fleet. According to the database we hacked from their systems, that's more than they've lost in 300 years of conquest combined." Taiwan nodded slowly. The Varkath had retreated because humans had hurt them in ways they didn't expect. But he knew they would come back. Next time, with more ships, more weapons, more determination. "Get me Earth Command," he said. "We need to prepare." This was just the first battle. Across the galaxy, other alien species watched the battle through their scanners and listening posts. They had seen the Varkath demand surrender. They had seen the humans refuse. They had seen the impossible happen. A primitive species had made the mighty Varkath coalition bleed. In the deep dark of space, in places the Varkath controlled, other conquered species whispered to each other. They spoke of the humans who said no. They spoke of the humans who fought back. For the first time in 1,000 years, they felt something they had forgotten: hope. But on Earth, Taiwan received the intelligence reports. The Varkath were calling in their full military might. 3 grand fleets, each bigger than what Earth had just faced. They would come in 6 months. Taiwan looked at Earth below, at the world he had sworn to protect. 6 months to prepare for the impossible. 6 months to figure out how to survive when survival seemed impossible. He turned to his crew. "Get to work," he said. "We've got a war to win." 6 months passed like a storm. Every factory on Earth worked day and night. Every shipyard built weapons. Every person who could fight trained for war. The Varkath were coming back, and Earth had to be ready. Hyun worked in a secret laboratory under the mountains of Korea. He was a weapons researcher, and he had an idea. The Varkath had powerful shields that stopped energy weapons. Plasma and lasers just bounced off, but Hyun thought about old weapons, simple weapons. He built a massive railgun that used magnets to throw chunks of metal at incredible speed. "It's just physics," Hyun explained to the military officers watching his test. "Their shields stop energy. But a rock moving at near light speed? That's just mass and velocity. Let's see them stop that. He fired the test shot. A piece of asteroid, no bigger than a car, shot from the railgun. It hit the test shield at 1,000 miles per second. The shield shattered. The rock kept going, punching a hole through 3 feet of armor behind it. The officers approved mass production immediately. Within weeks, railguns were being installed on every human ship and orbital platform. Meanwhile, Minji traveled to the outer reaches of space. She was a diplomat, trying to find allies. Most alien species were too afraid of the Varkath to help, but she found 3 species who hated their Varkath masters. They couldn't fight openly, but they could share information. They could provide supplies. It wasn't much, but it was something. On Titan, Saturn's largest moon, Do-hyun prepared the colonies for evacuation. He commanded the military forces there, but he was also helping civilians get to safety. Thousands of ships left every day, carrying people deeper into space, away from the coming battle. Will we win? A young girl asked him as she boarded a transport. Do-hyun smiled, even though he didn't know the answer. We'll fight, he said. That's what humans do. Then the Varkath returned. 3 grand fleets appeared in 3 places at once. 1 at Earth, 1 at Mars, 1 at Proxima Centauri, humanity's newest colony. Each fleet was bigger than the one Earth had fought before. The attack was coordinated and brutal. At Proxima, the human defenders lasted 5 days before the planet fell. The Varkath glassed the surface, burning away the atmosphere. Millions died. At Mars, the battle lasted 3 days. The red planet had fewer defenses than Earth. When the Varkath broke through, Do-hyun led the final evacuation. He stayed behind with volunteers, fighting from the Martian bases while others escaped. He died when the Varkath orbital bombardment destroyed the command center. But he bought enough time for most of the civilians to get away. At Earth, the Third Fleet attacked with overwhelming force. Orbital platforms fired Hyun's railguns. The Varkath ships discovered too late that their shields were useless. Chunks of metal moving at impossible speeds smashed through their hulls. Varkath dreadnoughts cracked open and died. But there were so many of them. For every ship the railguns destroyed, 2 more took its place. The platforms fell one by one. Soon, Varkath ships reached Earth's atmosphere. Taewon commanded the defense from the Defiant, but his ship was dying. Half the crew was dead. Nari had given up fixing systems properly. She just kept them running with tape and prayers. Commander, they're landing troops in Asia, Sora reported. Europe too. Africa. They're everywhere. Taewon gritted his teeth. The fleet battle was lost. Now it would be a ground war. Varkath soldiers were monsters. Each one stood 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor. They had been engineered for war. Genetically perfect. Their weapons could level buildings. Military analysts said 1 Varkath soldier was worth 10 human soldiers. But the analysts had never seen humans defend their homes. In Seoul, in New York, in Lagos, in Mumbai, people fought back. Soldiers and civilians together, they turned every street into a battlefield. They used buildings for cover, sewers for movement, their knowledge of the cities against the invaders. In Seoul, regular people threw homemade explosives from windows. They collapsed buildings on Varkath patrols. They fought with guns, with knives, with their bare hands, when they had nothing else. The Varkath had superior weapons and armor, but they had never fought urban warfare. Every building was a fortress. Every citizen was a soldier. The Varkath advanced slowly, taking terrible losses. They burned the cities as they went, killing everyone. But humans didn't run. They fought for every street, every building, every room. In space, Sora made a decision. The Defiant and 11 other damaged destroyers couldn't win the battle, but they could change it. She volunteered to lead them on a final mission. We're going to ram the command carrier, she told her crew. Anyone who wants to leave, Use the escape pods now. No shame in it. Nobody left. Sora took the 12 ships on a crazy course. They flew straight toward the sun, using its gravity to slingshot around. The Varkath fleet tried to intercept them, but the ships were moving too fast, and the sun's radiation messed with their sensors. The 12 destroyers came around the sun at incredible speed, aimed straight at the Varkath command carrier. It was the biggest ship in their fleet, where the admiral commanded the entire invasion. The carrier's shields came up, its weapons fired, 3 human ships exploded, then 4 more. But the remaining 5 kept coming. "For Earth!" Sora shouted into the comm. "For humanity!" The 5 ships hit the carrier's shields at the same moment. The shields held for 3 seconds. Then the ships triggered their fusion reactors, detonating them all at once. The explosion was like a new sun. The command carrier broke apart, its pieces spinning into space. The Varkath admiral and his entire staff died instantly. Without their command ship, the invasion fleet lost coordination. Ships stopped receiving orders. They didn't know whether to continue fighting or retreat. Some kept attacking. Others pulled back. The confusion spread. Taiwan saw the opening. All remaining ships, focus fire on their command structure. Take out every flagship you can see. The battered human fleet concentrated their railguns on Varkath command ships. One by one, the alien leaders died. The invasion fleet began to fall apart. On Earth's surface, Varkath soldiers suddenly received conflicting orders. Some were told to advance, others to retreat. Some got no orders at all. The humans pressed their advantage, counterattacking with everything they had. 3 days later, the Varkath fleet withdrew. They had taken Earth's orbital space, but they couldn't hold the surface. Their losses were too high. Their command structure was shattered. The cost of conquest was too great. As the alien ships escaped into hyperspace, humans around the world emerged from bunkers and basements. They looked at their cities, now ruins. They counted their dead, now numbering in the billions. Earth's orbit was a graveyard of broken ships. Mars was lost, Proxima was gone. But Earth still stood. Humanity survived. Taiwan walked through the wreckage of the Defiance Bridge. Nari was there, bandaged and exhausted. Jiho had returned, his fighter barely able to fly. So many were gone. Do-hyun was dead. Sora was dead. Thousands of others. Did we win? Jiho asked, the same question as before. This time, Taiwan had a different answer. Messages came from across the galaxy. 3 alien species sent secret communications to Earth. They were the ones Minji had contacted. They offered support, technology, supplies. They did it secretly because they feared the Varkath. But they did it because they had seen humans fight. And they believed humanity might actually win this war. Hyun's team began reverse engineering alien technology from captured Varkath ships. Human science leaped forward in weeks. They learned how to make better shields, faster engines, stronger weapons. But everyone knew the Varkath would come again. And next time, they would be ready for railguns. Next time, they would protect their command ships better. Next time, they would bring even more force. Earth had maybe 2 years before the next attack. 2 years to rebuild, to prepare, to get stronger. Taiwan stood on a balcony, looking at Seoul's ruins. The city where he was born was now broken, but people were already clearing rubble, already rebuilding. That was humanity. Knocked down, they got back up. We can't keep fighting like this, Nari said beside him. Every battle, we barely survive. Eventually, our luck will run out. Then we won't fight like this, Taiwan replied. We'll change. We'll adapt. We'll find new ways to fight. He looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Varkath were licking their wounds, planning their revenge. But somewhere out there, other species were watching, hoping. The galaxy had trembled before alien fire. but humanity stood unyielding. 2 years had passed since the Second Battle of Earth. The war had changed. Humanity had changed. There were no more massive fleet battles. Instead, the galaxy saw something it had never seen before: human guerrilla warfare in space. Sergeant Sung led a Marine boarding team onto a Varkath supply ship. His team of 20 soldiers moved through the dark corridors, their boots magnetic against the metal floors. They had done this 100 times before. Board enemy ships, kill the crew, steal supplies and technology, escape before reinforcements arrived. The Varkath had better weapons and armor. In open battle, they were superior. But inside the tight corridors of a starship, all that mattered was speed and aggression. Humans excelled at both. Seung's team found the Varkath crew in the cargo bay. The aliens raised their weapons, but the humans were faster. Grenades flew. Guns roared. In 30 seconds, the Varkath were dead. In 5 minutes, the humans had downloaded the ship's data and set explosives. In 10 minutes, they were back on their stealth ship, watching the supply vessel explode behind them. "Another one down," Seung reported to command. "That's 3 this week." All across Varkath space, human teams did the same. They attacked supply lines. They destroyed communication stations. They ambushed patrol ships. The Varkath couldn't fight an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't catch an enemy that never stayed still. But the war was taking its toll on humanity too. On Earth, Dr. Ariam worked in a military hospital, treating soldiers who returned from missions. She saw things that worried her. Many soldiers had been fighting for 2 years straight, with no breaks. Normal people would have broken under that stress. The Varkath rotated their troops regularly to prevent mental exhaustion, but human volunteers kept signing up. They kept fighting. Some of Ariam's patients had been wounded 5 times, 10 times. They recovered and went back to fight again. The Varkath thought humans were insane. Ariam wasn't sure they were wrong. "Why do you keep going back?" she asked Seung when he came in for treatment. He had burns across his left side from a Varkath plasma weapon. He smiled, even though it clearly hurt. "Because if I don't, who will? My family is on Earth. My friends. Everything I love. I'll keep fighting until either I'm dead or they're safe." Ariam wrote in her reports that humans weren't breaking. They were getting stronger. Every battle taught them new lessons. Every loss made them more determined. The galaxy called it madness. Humans called it resolve. Meanwhile, deep in Varkath-controlled space, an intelligence operative named Yuna worked undercover. She had been living among aliens for 18 months, pretending to be a trader from a neutral species. She wore disguises created by human technology. She spoke alien languages perfectly, and she listened. She listened. She wore disguise. She listened. Yuna had learned many secrets. She knew where the Varkath built their ships. She knew their supply routes. She knew which species in the coalition were unhappy with the war. But recently, she had heard something else. Whispers about the truth behind the coalition itself. She broke into a Varkath data facility on a remote moon. It took her 3 days to crack their security. What she found changed everything. The Varkath coalition wasn't formed to conquer. It was formed out of fear. 1,000 years ago, a species called the Precursors had nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy. The Precursors had technology beyond imagination. They had treated other species like insects. When they finally destroyed themselves in a civil war, the surviving species made a pact. Never again would any species be allowed to become too powerful. Never again would anyone threaten the galaxy. The coalition enforced this rule ruthlessly. Any species that showed too much ambition, too much growth, too much potential was conquered and controlled. Humanity triggered every one of their fears. Humans advanced too quickly. They refused to submit. They kept getting stronger, despite losses. To the Varkath, humans looked like the Precursors reborn. Yuna sent this information back to Earth through secret channels. When Taewon read her report, he understood for the first time why the Varkath fought so desperately. They weren't being cruel. They were terrified. But understanding the enemy didn't mean agreeing with them. Earth's council debated what to do with this information. Some suggested trying to negotiate, to convince the Varkath that humans weren't like the precursors. Others wanted to use the coalition's fear against them. Then the Varkath sent a new message. They offered peace terms. Humanity could survive, but they had to accept genetic modification. The Varkath would alter human DNA to make them less aggressive, less ambitious, less dangerous. They would remove humanity's drive to expand and conquer. They want to change what we are, Taewon said to the council. They want to make us something else. The debate raged for weeks. Many people on Earth were tired of war. Billions had died already. Cities were ruins. The economy was destroyed. Maybe changing a little was worth survival. Maybe peace was worth the price. Ariam argued against it. She showed her data. Our soldiers don't break because of who we are. Our determination, our refusal to give up, our willingness to keep fighting when any sane species would surrender. That's not a flaw. That's what makes us human. Take that away, and we might survive, but we won't be us anymore. Taewon visited military bases, talking to soldiers. He asked them the same question. Would you accept modification for peace? Every single one said no. We're fighting for humanity, Seung told him. Not for humans that used to be. If we change ourselves to survive, then what did all those people die for? The council voted. The decision was close, but it was clear. Humanity rejected the offer. Taewon broadcast the response across the galaxy. His speech was simple and direct. The Varkath coalition fears what we might become. They want us to change what we are. But what we are is why we survive. We don't bend. We don't break. We adapt. We endure. We overcome. You can destroy us, but you cannot make us into something else. We are human, and we will stay human, whatever the cost. The galaxy listened. The Varkath heard, and the war intensified. But something else happened too. More species began helping humanity in secret. Yuna's information spread through underground networks. And active, other conquered species learned that the coalition was built on fear, not strength. They learned that the Varkath could be beaten. Small rebellions started on coalition worlds. Nothing major. Nothing the Varkath couldn't crush. But it was the first resistance in centuries. The coalition had to divert forces to maintain control. Fewer ships could focus on fighting humans. Taewon saw the opportunity. Instead of defending, humanity went on the offensive. Using intelligence from Yuna and technology from their secret allies, human strike teams began targeting coalition infrastructure. Shipyards exploded. Communication relays went dark. Supply depots vanished overnight. The Varkath realized they were losing control, not just of the war with humanity, but of the galaxy itself. The fear they had used to rule for 1,000 years was being replaced by something they didn't understand. Hope. On Earth, Hyun finished his latest project. Using captured Varkath technology and human innovation, he had built something new. A slipspace drive that matched alien speeds. Now human ships could travel as fast as their enemies. Now they could strike anywhere in the galaxy. We're ready, Hyun told Taewon. Ready to take the fight to them. Nari had rebuilt Earth's fleet. New ships, better weapons, stronger shields. They combined human creativity with alien technology. The result was powerful. Not as powerful as the Varkath yet, but getting closer every day. Jiho trained new pilots. Young men and women who had grown up during the war. They flew with the same reckless courage that had won the first battles, but now with years of experience added. They were the best fighter pilots in the galaxy. Taewon looked at everything humanity had built. In 3 years, they had gone from desperate defense to strategic offense. They had gone from primitive newcomers to a real threat. The Varkath were right to fear human potential. But the war wasn't over. The coalition still had more ships, more soldiers, more resources. Earth had determination and innovation. But was that enough? Una sent one more message. The Varkath were planning a final offensive. They would gather their entire military, every ship they had, and crush humanity once and for all. It would take them a year to assemble such a force. 1 year, until the biggest battle in galactic history. Taewon called his commanders together, Sung, representing the Marines, Nari, representing the engineers, Hyun, representing the scientists, Jiho, representing the pilots, and hundreds of others. They're coming with everything, Taewon said. 1 year from now. We can't beat them in a straight fight. So we won't fight straight. We'll hit them first. We'll break the coalition before they can gather their full strength. It was a bold plan. Insane, probably. Attack the Varkath in their own territory. Strike at their homeworlds while they prepared for invasion. Any military strategist would call it suicide. But Taewon had learned something in 3 years of war. Humans didn't win by following the rules. They won by doing what their enemies thought was impossible. 5 years into the war, humanity launched its boldest move yet. Captain Junho commanded the Indomitable, humanity's first true dreadnought. It was built from the ground up, with human and alien technology combined. Around it sailed a fleet of 200 ships, the largest force Earth had ever assembled. But Junho's fleet wasn't alone. Ships from the Velcor species sailed beside them, and Istani cruisers guarded their flanks. 2 alien species had finally broken away from the coalition, tired of a war that was bleeding them dry. Diplomat Taemin had spent 2 years convincing them, showing them that the Varkath couldn't win, that the coalition was built on lies and fear. The combined fleet jumped into slipspace, heading straight for Varkath Prime, the enemy homeworld, the heart of the coalition. It was the last place the Varkath expected an attack. When Junho's fleet dropped out of slipspace at the edge of the Varkath system, alarms screamed across the planet. The Varkath had thousands of ships in orbit, but they were scattered, preparing for their own offensive against Earth. They had never imagined enemies would come here. All ships, attack formation, Junho ordered. Show them what humanity can do. The battle began. Varkath defense stations opened fire, their plasma cannons lighting up space. But Hyun's latest invention was aboard every human ship. Shield technology that could actually stop energy weapons. Not perfectly, but well enough. The human fleet pushed forward, their railguns firing chunks of metal that punched through enemy hulls. Jiho led his fighter squadrons into the chaos. He was a commander now, not just a pilot, but he still flew at the front. His people followed him through impossible maneuvers, weaving between Varkath capital ships, targeting their engines and weapons. The Varkath fleet tried to organize a defense, but they were confused. Some ships moved to protect the planet. Others tried to surround the attackers. They got in each other's way. The humans, Velcor, and Istani worked together smoothly. Their tactics coordinated. Their command structure is slow, Sora would have said if she were alive. But her lessons lived on. The human fleet targeted command ships first, creating chaos in the enemy ranks. The battle raged for days. Space around Varkath Prime became a graveyard. Ships exploded constantly. Debris filled the orbits. The planet below watched in horror as their invincible fleet died above them. On the 6th day, Junho made a risky move. He took the Indomitable and 30 other ships straight through the Varkath defensive line. They lost 10 ships in the charge, but the rest broke through. Now they were between the Varkath fleet and the planet. Target their orbital defense platforms, Junho commanded. The platforms were massive structures, bigger than most ships. They protected the planet with shields and weapons. But they were designed to shoot outward, at attackers, from space. Nobody had ever gotten behind them before. Human railguns fired at point-blank range. The platforms shattered, one by one. The planet's shields began to fail. Seung's Marines launched from assault ships, targeting the shield generators on the planet's surface. They dropped through the atmosphere in armored pods, burning through the air like meteors. Varkath ground forces tried to stop them, but the Marines were veterans now, hardened by 5 years of constant fighting. Seung's team hit their target, a massive shield generator in the northern continent. They fought through waves of defenders, using every trick they had learned. When they reached the generator core, they planted explosives and ran. The explosion took down the entire northern shield grid. Junho's fleet had a clear shot at military targets on the surface, but Junho held his fire. "Do not bombard the cities," he ordered. "Military targets only. We're not here to murder civilians." His officers looked at him in surprise. They had the enemy homeworld helpless. Earth's council had authorized total destruction, if necessary. Revenge for all the human worlds the Varkath had glassed. "Sir," his tactical officer said carefully, "we could end this war right now. One strike." "At what cost?" Junho asked. "We'd become what they feared. We'd prove them right about us." On the Varkath planet below, people waited for death. They had destroyed human worlds. They expected the same treatment. But the human fleet only targeted military bases, weapons factories, and ship production facilities. The battle in orbit continued for another week. The Varkath threw everything they had at the human fleet. But it wasn't enough. Too many of their ships had been preparing for the Earth offensive and were scattered across the galaxy. The forces at the homeworld, even with reinforcements, couldn't stop the combined human Velkor-Istani attack. Finally, the Varkath defense fleet broke. Surviving ships retreated to the outer system. Varkath Prime was defenseless. Taewon arrived with a second human fleet, jumping in from Earth. He had timed it perfectly, arriving when the battle was won, but before anyone could make mistakes, he took command of the combined forces. From orbit, Taewon broadcast a message to the planet below. To the entire galaxy. "People of Varkath Prime, your fleet is defeated. Your defenses are down. We could destroy your world. We could do to you what you have done to us, and others, for 1,000 years." The Varkath leadership listened, waiting for the end. "But we won't," Taewon continued. "Because we fight for survival, not revenge. We fight to protect our freedom, not to take yours. Surrender, and we will prove that humanity can be merciful too." Silence filled the galaxy. No conqueror in galactic history had ever offered mercy from a position of total victory. The Varkath couldn't understand it. Their entire worldview said that the strong dominated the weak. That was how the galaxy worked. But Taewon's offer was real, and the Varkath had lost. They had no choice. Their leadership surrendered. The last species of the coalition laid down their weapons. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The Varkath coalition, rulers of the galaxy for 1,000 years, had fallen. Humanity, the young species that everyone said would be crushed, had won. But the cost had been terrible. Junho's fleet had lost 70 ships in the battle. Thousands more humans had died. Seung survived, but barely. Half his team was dead. Jiho's squadron was down to 3 fighters from 12. And in the middle of the battle, something happened that broke Taewon's heart. A Varkath suicide ship had rammed the Indomitable's escort carrier. Among the dead was Nari, who had been visiting the ship to inspect its engines. The woman who had kept the Defiant running through impossible battles, who had kept Earth's fleet flying when it should have fallen apart, was gone. Taewon stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking at Varkath Prime below. He should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt tired. So many friends were dead. So many cities on Earth were still ruins. Humanity had won the war, but the scars would last for generations. "Commander," a comm officer said quietly, "the other coalition species are sending surrender messages. The Velcor and Istani are asking what happens now. Everyone wants to know what humanity plans to do. That was the question. What did you do after you won? The Varkath had conquered. They had ruled through fear. Humanity could do the same. Earth's fleet was the strongest in the galaxy now. They could demand tribute, force obedience, build an empire. Taewon thought about everything humanity had fought for. Freedom. The right to exist as they were. The right to make their own choices. If they took that from others, what had the war been for? Tell them we're not here to rule, Taewon said. Tell them we're going to do something different. He began drafting a proposal. A new galactic order. Not an empire. Not a coalition built on fear. Something else. Something the galaxy had never seen. A council where all species had equal voice. Where disputes were settled with words, not weapons. Where young species could grow without being crushed. Where old species could thrive without dominating. It was an idealistic vision. Maybe impossible. But humans had done impossible things before. Junho, recovering from his wounds, approved the plan. Jiho, now one of the most decorated pilots in human history, just laughed. We've been doing crazy things for 5 years. Why stop now? Sung, visiting Ariam's hospital for his injuries again, added his support. My team didn't die, so we could become the new tyrants. They died for freedom. Real freedom. For everyone. Fung. Float. Fung. The proposal went to Earth's council. After 5 years of war, after billions of deaths, they had to decide. Would humanity be conquerors or peacemakers? The vote was close. Many wanted revenge. Many wanted to be strong enough that no one would ever threaten them again. But in the end, the majority chose Taewon's path. Humanity would offer mercy. They would try to build peace. The galaxy watched in amazement as Earth, victorious and powerful, chose not to dominate, but to cooperate. 10 years after the first Varkath ship appeared above Earth, the galaxy looked completely different. The war was over. The coalition was disbanded, and humanity stood at the center of a new galactic order they had created. Taewon, now older and bearing the scars of countless battles, served as the first marshal of the Concordat. That was what they called the New Galactic Council. Every species had a seat. Every voice mattered equally. From the mighty Varkath to the smallest colonies, all were represented. It wasn't perfect. Arguments broke out daily. Old hatreds didn't disappear just because the war ended. Species that the Varkath had conquered for centuries didn't trust easily, and the Varkath themselves struggled to accept their fall from power. But it was working. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy was learning to talk instead of fight. Taewon made sure of that. He commanded the Concordat Defense Fleet, not as a conqueror, but as a guardian. When disputes arose, he didn't take sides. He enforced the peace for everyone. On Mars, the rebuilding had taken 8 years. Do-hyun's sacrifice hadn't been forgotten. The main city was renamed in his honor. Green domes now covered the red surface, full of parks and gardens. Children who had never known war played in streets where battles had raged. Hyun now led the Concordat Science Council. His railguns, built for destruction, had been converted to peaceful uses. Massive orbital launchers now sent cargo pods between worlds instead of weapons at enemies. His latest project was even more ambitious. Terraforming. He wanted to restore the worlds the war had destroyed. We broke them, Hyun said to his team. Now we fix them. That's justice. Dr. Ariam had founded the first interspecies medical corps. She taught alien doctors about human resilience, about the psychological strength that had let humanity endure 5 years of brutal war. In return, she learned alien medicine, treatments, and techniques beyond human knowledge. She traveled to former coalition worlds, treating people who had suffered under Varkath rule. And she treated Varkath too, those injured in the war or struggling with the shame of defeat. healing everyone equally, without judgment. Pain is pain, she told her students. It doesn't matter what species feels it. 1. Jiho had retired from active service. He was only 30 years old, but he had fought for a decade. That was enough. He ran a flight school now, teaching both human and alien pilots. Strange to see Varkath youngsters learning from the human who had destroyed so many of their ships. But they learned well, and Jiho treated them fairly. Sometimes, late at night, he would visit the memorial in Seoul. It was a massive wall, stretching for miles, covered in names. Every human who died in the war. Billions of names, carved in stone that would last forever. Nari's name was there. Sora's name. Do-hyun's name. And so many others. Jiho would stand before the wall with other veterans, remembering. They never spoke much. The memories were too heavy for words. But they came, year after year, to honor the dead. One night, Taewon found him there. The old commander looked tired. Leading the Concordat was harder than fighting the war had been. Do you think they'd be proud? Jiho asked, gesturing at the names. Of what we built. Taewon was quiet for a long moment. I think Sora would approve. She always wanted to find the smart solution, not just the violent one. And Do-hyun? He died, protecting people. That's what the Concordat does now. Protects people. And Nari? Taewon smiled sadly. Nari would complain that we're not maintaining the systems properly. Then she'd fix everything herself, while telling us we're idiots. They both laughed, though it hurt. Some wounds never fully healed. Across the galaxy, former enemies were learning to work together. Human engineers helped rebuild Varkath shipyards. Varkath scientists shared technology with Earth. The Velcor and Istani, humanity's first allies, helped mediate disputes between species that didn't trust each other. It wasn't just mercy that made this possible. It was also practical. The galaxy faced threats that individual species couldn't handle alone. Pirates, rogue AI, natural disasters. By working together, they could do more than any single species. But Yuna, now the director of Concordat Intelligence, had discovered something that worried her deeply. In her old networks, in her secret sources, she had found references to the precursors, the ancient species that had terrified the galaxy 1,000 years ago. They weren't extinct. They were sleeping. And human expansion into new sectors was getting close to their territory. Yuna brought her findings to Taewon privately. We need to be careful, she said. If the precursors wake up, everything we've built could fall apart. Taewon studied her data. Ancient ruins, strange energy signatures, reports from exploration teams about abandoned worlds with technology beyond anything the current galaxy had. Does the Concordat know? He asked. Not yet. I wanted you to see it first. This could panic people. The whole coalition was built on fear of the precursors. If that fear comes back, Taewon nodded. Then, species might start building weapons again instead of trust. Keep investigating. But quietly. We'll face this threat when we're ready. Together. Meanwhile, on Earth, life was returning to normal. Cities were rebuilt. Bigger and better than before. The war generation was aging. And young people who had never known battle were growing up. They learned about the war in schools, but it seemed like ancient history to them. Some veterans worried that people were forgetting. That the lessons learned in blood would be lost. But others, like Jiho, thought it was good. The war had been necessary, but living in its shadow forever wasn't healthy. Let them forget the pain, Jiho said. As long as they remember the principles, freedom is worth fighting for. Peace is worth building. And mercy is stronger than revenge. Seung had become an instructor for the Concordat Defense Forces. He trained Marines from a dozen species, teaching them the tactics that had won the war. Close quarters combat, boarding actions, guerrilla warfare. But he also taught them restraint. When to fight and when to talk. How to be warriors when necessary, and peacemakers when possible. We fought for 5 years, he told his students. We killed thousands. I've got scars that will never heal, and nightmares that never stop. But you know what I'm most proud of? That when we won, we didn't keep killing. His students listened carefully. They came from species that had been enemies during the war. Varkath soldiers training alongside humans. Former coalition species, learning from the people who had defeated them. It was strange and sometimes awkward. Old hatreds surfaced in arguments and fights. But slowly, bonds formed. Shared training created shared respect. Yesterday's enemies became today's comrades. That was the real victory, Taewon thought. Not the battles won, but the peace built. The galaxy had learned that there was another way. That cooperation could be stronger than domination. That different species could work together instead of fighting. The Concordat wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts. Still struggles. Some species tried to gain advantage over others. Some held grudges from the war. Corruption existed. Incompetence too. But it was better than what came before. And it was improving. Slowly, but steadily. At a Concordat assembly, Taewon gave a speech that would be remembered for generations. He was 70 years old now, scarred and gray. But his voice was still strong. 10 years ago, the galaxy trembled before alien fire, he began. The Varkath coalition came to Earth and demanded our surrender. We said no. Not because we were strong, but because we refused to accept that our story could end like that. He looked at the assembled representatives. Humans, Varkath, Velkor, Istani, and dozens of other species. We fought. For 5 years. We lost billions. Our worlds burned. Our friends died. And when we won, we could have become what our enemies feared. We could have ruled. Through strength. But we didn't. We chose something harder. We chose to build instead of dominate. To cooperate instead of conquer. To offer mercy instead of revenge. And look at what we've created. Around him, representatives from former enemy species nodded. The Concordat was their achievement too. Built from the ashes of war, it represented hope for a better future. The galaxy still faces threats, Taewon continued. There are dangers out there we don't understand yet. But we'll face them. Together. Not as separate species fighting for survival, but as partners working for the common good. He finished with the words that had become the Concordat's motto. We were told to submit. We chose to fight. We were told to despair. We chose to hope. And when victory came, we chose mercy. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or technology, but the simple truth that another way is possible. The assembly gave him a standing ovation. But Taewon barely noticed. He was thinking about the people who weren't there to see it. Sora, Do-hyun, Nari, all the billions who had died so this moment could happen. After the assembly, as Taewon prepared to leave, alarms suddenly sounded. Not battle alarms. Exploration alerts. A scout ship had found something at the galactic core. Structures. Technology. Energy signatures that matched nothing in the database. The precursors were stirring. Yuna appeared at Taewon's side. It's happening. Taewon looked at the alert displays. Then, at the Concordat Assembly Hall. 10 years ago, humanity had faced the Varkath alone. Now, they had allies. Friends. Partners. We do what we've always done, he said. We prepare. We adapt. We face it together. Messages went out across the galaxy. The Concordat was mobilizing. Not for war, but for defense. All species contributed ships, soldiers, scientists. Human vessels sailed alongside Varkath dreadnoughts. former enemies working as one fleet. Jiho came out of retirement to help train the new generation of pilots. Sung organized the defense forces. Hyun began developing new technologies. Arium prepared medical facilities. Everyone who had fought in the last war stepped up to face this new threat. And at the front of the combined fleet, leading the way into the unknown, was Earth's flagship, the New Defiant, named after Taewon's old ship, named after the human spirit that refused to break. The galaxy had trembled before alien fire, and humanity had stood unyielding. Now, together with their former enemies turned allies, they would face whatever came next. Because they had learned the most important lesson. No species could survive alone. But together, they could overcome anything.